Blue skies finally, and it got cold outside. Elon, Putin, Zelenskyj, what's going on there? US dollar going down. Robotic window washers. I'm sure I've asked about this before. Starting a newsletter? Why not? Inktober, NaNoWriMo, and a lot more. Folks, Tuesday, October 4th, 2022. I'm Steven Sersky. Hope you are doing well. If you're in Beijing, staying warm, but enjoying the blue skies. Isn't that kind of nice to finally see today? And yeah, it has been, the temperature dropped quite a bit. It was a Sunday night, it was getting cold, but Monday was pretty cold as well. And then today was equal. It wasn't as windy today. But yeah, on the upshot, the smog is gone and the blue skies are here. So it's nice to look at, but it's one of those things where you're like, I could be in warmer places right now, even if it's just inside, right? This what's going on with Elon, Putin, and Zelenskyj? Not all three together, no, very separately. Now, Zelenskyj and Elon are very active on Twitter. Putin, not so much, but then again, I don't follow him, so I'm not sure if he has a government account on Twitter or not. Now, on Friday, I'm not sure if you guys saw this, what was going on was that Putin actually had another speech. They held referendums, and I mean, as referendums are in places such as Ukraine and Russia, they weren't real. I mean, they were referendums in name. Whether or not they actually were of the people, for the people, by the people, very good, not a good question. They weren't. And so on Friday, or it was Thursday or Friday, at some point, he held this rally in Red Square in Moscow, and you can see these videos of him saying on the count of three, say "ura ura ura," and it's just bizarre. You're going, so like, Crimea's getting bombed now. I mean, they've been bombing Crimea. Like Ukrainians have been getting into Crimea as well, and they're declaring some sort of liberation of these few places that they want to hold referendums in, and it's not just Donetsk and Luhansk. It's there's a few other places that they're laying claim to, which basically means that in theory, it should mean that if Ukraine uses U.S. sponsored or U.S. or NATO provided weapons, then on those areas, that means it's basically a declaration of war against Russia. The problem is that the UN doesn't recognize these things at all. NATO's not recognizing the referendums. Countries around the world aren't recognizing these referendums. So it's going back to like Russia's word against the West. And as we've seen, it's not like Russia is playing by the rule book of war, and he just doesn't care. I mean, he's like, well, why should I follow your rule book? And I can't blame him. I mean, why would anyone follow a playbook of war that is written by the enemy? It just that doesn't make sense at all. And so he's sort of pushing ahead with this. He holds his rally. He goes on some long-winded speech that was just very, very distorted view of history. I mean, I don't know what kind of crack you have to smoke or drugs or what. Forget that. What kind of very skewed books are you reading that are giving you the ideas that this guy had? Some of them was that. It was like his long-standing point is that Ukraine is not a nation, and I mean it's false. If people want to be their own nation, basically, I mean, they can go ahead and try to do that. They can set up their own sovereignty, and this is what Ukraine is facing right now: is that they want to be independent. They want to be their own people, away from Soviet and Russian influence. But Russia keeps on sticking its dirty little fingers into its politics. Now you can say, yeah, the United States is doing that as well. But on the same side, I mentioned this last week, it is Ukraine's choice who it chooses to ally itself with. I mean, if it wants to go along with the U.S. because, I don't know, things seems to be, not just the U.S., the West, because things seem to be a lot better than they are, looking east, then that's the prerogative of Ukraine. And so this whole thing where Putin was just going on and on about the historical connection between these two countries, how and he was talking about the Russian speaking people around the world. Now this is kind of an issue because this starts to this creeps into China's territory. There's a lot of Russian speakers in this country, as well as around the world. So if he starts doing that, like Finland, Sweden, this is what Zelenskyj was warning about. He's like, if he invades, if he continues to invade and is successful in Ukraine, he is going to try to make a land grab for Finland and Sweden, which at one point were part of Russia many years ago. Finland and Sweden both applied for NATO membership, as far as I remember. Ukraine now has also officially applied for NATO membership. So if Russia was trying to get them not to do it, that didn't work. That goal did not work. So anyway, Putin goes off on some whatever distorted view of history again. And on Monday, Elon Musk gets into the equation. Now, Elon has been supportive of the war efforts in Ukraine, being pro-Ukrainian, seemingly so, providing Starlink services throughout the time. But all of a sudden on Monday, he tweets this thing out where he talks about should they settle for peace, sue for peace. There was another guy who was it Dave Smith on Joe Rogan was talking about this as well. And again, this goes back to one of these things where it's not. No. I mean, it's just a complete abomination of the idea that there could be a deal. And this is what Elon Musk's tweet kind of goes on. It's like, redo the elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Again, why does Russia care? He hasn't cared. He won't care about this. They say, and then he goes on, he states this, Crimea formerly part of Russia as it's been since 1783, despite Khrushchev's mistake. Again, Russia, I don't, does Putin ever talk about 1783? He has mentioned that Khrushchev made a mistake back when Crimea was handed over to Ukraine. Water supply to Crimea assured? Putin won't care. Ukraine remains neutral. Putin won't care. I mean, he goes on to say this is highly likely to be the outcome in the end, just a question of how many die before then. I don't know if it's highly likely that that's going to happen. I mean, those elections in the annexed regions don't matter. Like, it's not Putin going, well, now that Elon Musk is saying this, and now that the UN will supervise the elections. Okay, right. See, as the UN sanctifies, so no. If Putin wants to make more land grabs, he's going to do it. He's doing this. He's going by his own rule book. I don't know who is feeding him this stuff. It doesn't sound like he's consulting many other people. He's pretty much playing this one close to heart. He's playing his own hand and keeping people, probably rightfully so, out of the main decision-making organ sort of choices, because I don't think he can trust them. I don't think and I think he knows this. He's like, I can't trust you any more than I can trust the next guy. I mean, they're probably all trying out to kill him, or at least are part of whispers of trying to. So it's not like he's living, a luxurious, insulated life where he can just walk around doing whatever he wants. I think he's being doubly careful about his own advisors as well. So, of course, the response to Elon Musk, Putin never responded, surprisingly. But Zelenskyj basically says, he responds, which Elon Musk do you like more, one who supports Ukraine and one who supports Russia? Now, the big thing about Elon Musk's tweet was that it was a poll. It's just, so he says yes or no to the four things I mentioned before: redo the elections, Crimea's being part of Russia, water supply, and Ukraine remaining neutral. Yes or no. Zelenskyj responds with his own poll, which Elon do you like better, the one who supports Ukraine or one who supports Russia? So now it is made clear that Elon has been supporting Ukraine and the war efforts again throughout the time. So it's not as if he's pro-Russian. It's that these tweets are, it's like, why are you getting into this? And later on he says Russia's going into partial mobilization. If they go full time, if they go full war mobilization, death on both sides will be devastating. I guess, but the people that they're mobilizing don't want to fight. The Russians don't, the Russians that they're conscripting basically don't want to fight. Look at the reams, the streams of people fleeing the country at the moment. How about this? Donbass and Crimea should decide whether they're part of Russia or Ukraine. This was part of the issue back in 2014 when Putin was saying, we're not there. We're not part of it. We're not in Crimea doing anything. You sent your private military contractors with money that was funneled through whatever people and whatever channels you had to, and they were supporting pro-separatist movements in Crimea. So you can splice and dice the words all you like. At the end of the day, the Elon Musk is just rehashing all the stuff that hasn't worked already. So again, I don't know why he's trying to get involved in this argument of, oh, well, the people should decide. Putin doesn't care. Putin is not concerned about this at all. Meanwhile, the U.S. dollar going down, gold, silver going up, and markets have reversed. Now, why do I pair that so suddenly with this thing? We saw oil spike, and it sort of topped. Was at the beginning of the year, I guess it was. And it's one of these things where, and same with Bitcoin. That was the other one that was like, why is it all of a sudden peaking? Like, what's going on? Why doesn't it keep on going up to the moon, as so many people wanted to believe it would back in the day? So oil topped actually in March, double topped at the beginning of June, and has fallen steadily since then. Now, since at that time, gold topped in March at 2050 roughly, and since then has been going down pretty steadily. And the last couple of trading days in the U.S. markets and around the world, it's finally reversed course, and that's because the U.S. dollar has finally broken, so to speak. It hasn't broken as in like the dollar's dying. Yeah. U.S. dollar going to zero, not at all. No, what I mean is that it's finally topped, and so it topped at 114 at the end of last week. So what's happening? That probably means some sort of indication here is that China is now selling its treasuries or whatever it is, even though the country's under its National Day break. It seems that, and they said that there was going to be some sort of floodgates opened or whatever it was, just at the end of last week. And China holds a lot of U.S. debt. I don't have the numbers. I had these numbers at one point. They've changed since then. But at one point, China was the biggest creditor nation, and the U.S. was the biggest debtor nation. So the U.S. was in debt. China was holding that debt, basically. And if they ever chose to like release the floodgates, basically, it would spell some sort of doom and gloom for the U.S. dollar. Now that we've seen the U.S. dollar go up for the last night, goes up from 96 in February, hitting 114 just last week at the end of September. It's one of those things where you kind of wonder, what is China doing? What's the China hand in this current slap fest that's going around? I mean, I can't help but think it's like three people. What are those two characters on Friends? Monica and Rachel. When they get into that slap fight, that's kind of what I see happening in terms of like the goings on of just the very convenient movement of the U.S. dollar, gold, oil, basically the pulling out of Russia, or at least parts of these annexations and stuff like that. So geopolitically and financially, all seems to be somewhat connected. So what next? Good question. September is usually a bad month for the markets anyway. Whether October will be any better, good so far. It's off to a good start, but the whole idea is that at some point, I was mentioning that there was going to be some sort of balance anyway, and there could be throughout October, and then possibly another fall into November. Again, I don't know exactly, anything can happen. I mean, who knows? Even the big guys who have all the money have consultants on every tick of trade that they could possibly imagine. I mean, and if, let's put it this way: if you don't have a room full of analysts that you can call on to give you the best and worst case scenarios of what could happen if this and then that, then there is no way that you as an armchair strategist are going to be able to easily figure out and really understand what's going on. We don't, so we make educated guesses and risk as much capital as we're willing to and know more, hopefully, and also have our stop losses in place. All right, so anyway, moving on from geopolitics and finances, although I was actually told on the weekend that, Steve, why haven't you started a finance website, and talking about stuff like that? Good question. My father had his own newsletter. He wrote. He got interested in finances in the early '90s after giving a broker. It was $5,000 or $6,000, something like that, and the broker lost it. And I remember my dad always told the story. He's like, he asked for his money back, like wondering was it guaranteed, and the broker's like, well, no, it's just part of the game. And like my dad was he wasn't so much livid. He was like, what? And ever since then, it was basically a chip on his shoulder. Very cynical towards anyone who would tell him anything about money that basically he couldn't figure out on his own, or that he couldn't do on his own, or said, if someone said that it was the little guy couldn't win, he was basically like, well, fuck you, yes I can. And so he just went down on studying the stock market and everything. And I mean, that's when he started, like, computers were just being released and being made available to the people back then. And that's one of the reasons why we got a computer, was so that he could start studying how stocks work, and to also do some to work at home, because he started working at home late '90s, I think, and stuff like that. And that was sort of one of the things that enabled him to learn more about the stock market and write for his own readers, which were mostly agricultural readers at that time, because he was working for an agricultural publication. So it's not unheard of in my family to be, talking about finances. Actually, if you wonder where I get a lot of it from, it is from my father, and that cynicism towards economists and the big money, and the market is rigged. Sure, which way, so I can follow it, basically. I mean, I'm not going to argue against it. I want to know how I can profit from it. Oh, let the talking heads with gray hair go on. I don't care. Just how can I make money in the process, right? All right, so they are washing the windows outside, and I think I've mentioned this before. Why don't they have robotic window washers? I'm guessing it's because it's still economically feasible to hire these two guys swinging from the roof to wash the windows. I think they get to our building tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure. But, oh man, I don't know. I think that'd be kind of a cool job. I don't know how much they get paid here in China. Probably not very much, but I hope they get that whole hazard pay and everything. I'm hoping that it's at least, like minimum wage is basically around 3,000 roughly, plus 1,000 renminbi stipend, so 4,000 total per month here in China. I hope they're getting more than that. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know who to ask for that question. It's like, if I want to apply to be, where would you even look for these jobs? You can look for window washing jobs in Canada very easily. You go to any sort of agency job portal and stuff like that, and you can find a window washing job and sort of look it up. But here, how much do those guys get paid? Oh, good question. Some creativities are starting up. October marks the beginning. If you haven't started already, I know at least one guy who took part in this last year. Inktober. So every day for the next 31 days. So throughout the month of October, this is something that people are going to start. You can look for some of these designs online. You can actually look for guidance on this too, because they publish themes for every day. Now this Inktober, and the next month is NaNoWriMo, and then for me, I'm thinking I might go ahead with the December drumming again, then January, and then February I have another idea, but I'm not 100% committed to it, because again, as I found out last year, 3 months of creative output every single day plus all the other projects, plus Chinese, plus I'm doing the Delta now, plus working full time. It's a lot of stuff going on. We'll see. I don't know. What are you guys taking part of? Are you doing any of these creative projects as they are right now, or are you? What are your winter plans? Going into the colder season up here in the northern hemisphere. Do you have any ideas of what you're going to do to keep yourself busy and distracted and warm inside while the Earth tries to remind us how very small and cold we can get? All right, folks, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. I will talk a little bit more about the Inktober and NaNoWriMo tomorrow because there's actually one or two other ideas I think are interesting to throw about just in case someone is interested in taking part of that. Okay, again, show notes and tracks and vids up on my website, stevensersky.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will talk again. Bye-bye.